So, Toynbee Hall's based in Whitechapel in the old East End of London, and currently a lot of its work is based on giving advice. So that's a lot of money management advice, and that's in the borough of Tower Hamlets, and then the neighbouring little borough is City of London. So they have what was the old CAB, Citizens Advice Bureau. That's now part of Toynbee Hall running as called City Advice. So anyone in the City of London who lives, works or studies could come to them for any sort of advice.
Okay.
If in Tower Hamlets, it's more about predominantly money management advice and a little bit of welfare benefits advice. A few years ago, the government started a massive welfare reform idea at the same time as pulling lots of funding from welfare benefits advice. So the time they're changing it is the time that people need the advice, and it's not easy to find. There's also in the evenings they have free legal advice. So this is something that dates back to the old poor man's lawyer from 100 years ago, where we get lawyers from over in the city firms coming over in the evenings and giving their time for free. And that can be based on family law, employment law, civil cases, and housing law are the main areas. And then the other areas that we work in the community side of things is also a lot of just face-to-face support services. So we have some youth work projects that work in local secondary schools at about year 8, I think. So that makes them about 12, 13, something like that. And they work with students who've been referred through by the schools that they're not the high achievers, they're not the ones that are being excluded and getting the attention, they're the ones in the middle that might have other external issues. They might have mental health issues, they might be dealing with parents with mental health issues, they might be living with bereavement issues, that sort of stuff. And so there's a lot of mentoring work that goes on, one-to-one work, to see if that can build their confidence and self-esteem and then help them attain their I suppose their more expected outcome in their schooling.
Okay.
We have, touching on the schools as well, there's a lot of primary schools around the area, and they work together, and we offer them some ESOL classes, so learning English as a second language for a lot of the parents of the primary schools. And those parents are often quite isolated. All they know is maybe their home, their school, their corner shop, and that kind of stuff. So that it's not purely just learning of the language. There's an awful lot of daily skills. They use it as a practical way of trying to help them with doctor's appointments, travel tickets, all that kind of stuff. And there's the social element as well. So by getting people together, then they have that social bond. And a spin-off of that is trying to keep them together so that they can then develop their voice, their kind of joint voice, so that then you can, if you find people of a similar interest, you can then act on whatever it is that they're thinking about there. We have some community organisers as well that link both. They work with some of the youth projects and also the English classes. But they're also going out just meeting the local people, so very much on the doorstep and seeing what their issues are, what their interests are. So out of that, they've been able to form parents groups, they've been able to form girls groups where the girls have felt excluded from some of the young people's activities because their parents are not too keen of the girls mixing with boys. And this predominantly Bangladeshi area, which has some sort of conservative ideas, but a lot of it is also changing as well. And then we have some older people services. So they currently work in outreach ideas, so going out to people's homes, meeting people in community centres, running activities, but also bringing them into places like Toynbee Hall, where they have fitness activities, art classes, IT access and that kind of thing. And a part we've got is an awareness raising project which works with people, either older people with mental health issues, people with learning disabilities, raising awareness of abuse and safeguarding. So this might be talking about financial abuse and then building their confidence into knowing what different types of abuse are, what they look like, and then what to do if you yourself or somebody you're concerned about is experiencing abuse. So I think that's a lot of the community work that we do on a day-to-day basis. There's some national work that goes on as well. Some of these findings then become a way of trying to influence policy, maybe. So a lot of the financial inclusion stuff, where people are feeling left out from, say, banking because they don't have the right identity to open a bank account. We can help people with that sort of stuff as well. There's been areas in further into Tower Hamlets. There's an area around Poplar where you're in the shadow of Canary Wharf, so massive financial institutions. Yet there were a time when you couldn't access your money for free. There were no free holes in the wall. You either had to pay £1.85 in a shop or pay for a bus journey down to Canary Wharf to get your money out. There's these like little deserts, and that's where they try to identify these sort of things so they can try and influence local or national policy as well.
And what would you see as, community work as opposed to social work? I mean, where do you see the commonalities, or where do you see the difference? How does that work?
I think the commonalities are possibly the individual issues that people find. So that might be social deprivation, economic deprivation, or often health issues with social work. I think with community work, it's often the difference there, I think, is linking those people together. So then you then can build communities, so that a social worker would often go and visit and work with somebody on a one-to-one basis, and they then might refer them over to some sort of social club, day centre, etc. And then that's where it often stops. You've got the community bit that's then getting those people together and helping them make new social networks, build their sort of community resilience, I guess, and build on that well-being idea. Or it's the other side is with the development work that we're doing in very much local areas, is finding those similarities through maybe the economic challenges that they have. So it's getting people together to then become more powerful, I suppose, and then be able to voice these issues or concerns. So I think they're very similar, but I think the community work sees people and place and time together, whereas social work, I imagine, I think where I've worked in other services, in mental health services, it is quite a one-to-one, or it's a centre for people with mental health issues, and it's quite isolated. Whereas what we try to do is, although yes, we've got youth projects, and then we've got English classes, and then we've got older people's projects and advice, we try to mix them together. So that you've got intergenerational work coming from the youth and the older people together. We've got opportunities for the people that are learning English to practice their English in volunteering in some of these projects.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. And how would you, looking back historically over from the start of Tonby Hall to now, do you think the vision and goals are the same, or have they changed along the way? Types of approaches to how you work?
Well, I mean, in some ways it's quite sad, I suppose, where 130 years ago we would be seeing people coming into Toynbee Hall that had no shoes, nowhere to live and no food, and now today we're still seeing that. We still have people being referred through to food banks. I've seen a certain very definite increase in street sleeping in recent sort of months. So I think the common issues that we're finding are very similar, unfortunately, to what it was 130 years ago. I think there is differences that maybe the extreme poverty from 130 years ago is changed, but you still have that sort of very relative poverty of where people are completely excluded out of the modern world if they don't have access to IT, if it's all digital by default over here, all your benefits, etc., is going on IT basis, and if you don't have that access, then you're kind of out of the loop.
So it's sounding that your values, I guess, trying to end poverty within your area on a national level, and also to how you work, has pretty much been consistent through time.
Yeah, I think so, and I know that obviously things have changed and developed. So when in the 1880s, when they started working with local working class men doing reading, writing, and arithmetic, then things have obviously broadened out. So then it became wider classes, classes for women, and then. But I think that the common thread through it is that sort of social justice, social campaigning to improve people's current situation.
And would you say maybe the times of the 80s with Thatcherism and so forth, and decentralisation and privatisation, you think any of those policies have moulded or changed values or your approach to work in any way pre that time?
There's one thing I was thinking the other day is I think it might be interesting to go back and try to analyse how did we as an organisation survive the First World War? How did we survive the Great Depression in the 20s, and then the impact of the Second World War, and then the impact of the oil crisis? And I was looking at, I was talking to the finance director and thinking about, on a financial level, how did we survive these things? But with the 80s and the Thatcherism, I think it was something that was coming before that as well. There was a big development drive of self and individualism, and I think maybe Thatcher and Reaganomics just were the spearhead of that, but I don't think it was just down to them alone. So where Mrs. Thatcher said there's no such thing as society, and then with her attitudes towards things like unions, it did seem to feel that it was an attack on community from some respects, and I think that in some ways you feel that now with this sort of with the what does David Cameron talk about, the big society, is that although there's an attack on community in one respect, and then there's this also, but it'll all be all right because people will just do it themselves. So there is the big attack at the moment is obviously the rolling back even further of state intervention, so that funding for anything that we try to do is becoming more and more of a challenge.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's where we are at the moment now, is that the central government funding coming down through local government is reducing greatly.
Have you seen an increase in funding from Europe?
There's some bits that's coming from Europe, but a lot of it we go to trusts and foundations.
Yeah.
But then everyone's going for trusts and foundations, so that then that becomes even more competitive.
And is there then a pressure to have evidence-based practice to be able to evaluate what you're doing that you may have not noticed 20, 30 years ago?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think that that in the past there hasn't been the drive for the outcomes and the evidence-based. The difficulty is sometimes they are so soft outcomes that it's difficult to try and frame it. So that's the important thing, is to try and find a way of measuring those very soft, small step successes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers